The Valoran Empire had ruled the stars for 30,000 years. 12 species bowed before its throne, and 1,000,000 worlds paid tribute to its power. The Empire believed itself eternal, unbreakable, and beyond challenge. When their long-range sensors detected a small blue planet filled with life, they felt nothing but mild curiosity. Humans, that was what these creatures called themselves. They lived on a single world called Earth, crowded together in cities of glass and stone. They had only recently learned to travel beyond their own moon. Their ships were slow, their weapons primitive, and their lifespans laughably short. The Empire watched them for several years and concluded that humanity posed no threat whatsoever. High Arbiter Malvith sat upon his golden throne on the world of Valora and reviewed the reports about Earth. His advisors told him that humans were emotional, disorganized, and prone to fighting among themselves. They had no unified government, no great fleet, and no understanding of galactic politics. Malvith made his decision in less than an hour. He would give them a choice: surrender or die. Admiral Una received the Empire's message on a cold morning in December. She stood in the command center of Earth's orbital defense station, reading the words on her screen with growing dread. The message was simple. Humanity must give up all territory beyond their moon. They must never build warships again. They must accept Valoran observers on their world forever. If they refused, Earth would be cleansed. Una was 53 years old. She had spent her entire life building Earth's small fleet of exploration vessels and defense satellites. She knew better than anyone how weak humanity truly was. She immediately contacted the World Council and begged them to negotiate. The Council refused. Humanity had survived ice ages, plagues, and world wars. They had clawed their way up from caves to reach the stars. They would not bow to aliens who had done nothing to earn their submission. Pride, they called it. Dignity, the right of any species to stand tall. Una tried to explain that pride would not stop orbital bombardment. The Council did not listen. 3 days later, the Valoran cleansing fleet arrived. 2,000 warships darkened the sky, each one larger than any vessel humanity had ever built. They did not wait for a formal declaration of war. They did not offer a final chance to surrender. They simply opened fire. Captain Taiho was eating breakfast with his wife, Minji, when the first bombs fell on Seoul. The windows of their small apartment exploded inward, throwing them both to the floor. Taiho grabbed Minji's hand and pulled her toward the door, but the building was already collapsing around them. He remembered the sound of her voice calling his name. He remembered the heat of the flames and the terrible weight of the ceiling falling down. He remembered digging through the rubble with his bare hands, blood mixing with dust as he searched for her. He found her body 3 hours later. She was still holding her stomach, trying to protect the child she carried inside her. The child they had planned to name Siwoo. Taiho pulled her wedding ring from her finger and held it in his palm. Around him, Seoul burned. 10 million people had lived in this city. Now there was only fire and silence. The same scene repeated across the world. Tokyo vanished under a wall of flame. New York became a crater. Lagos, London, Beijing, Mumbai, one by one, the great cities of Earth were erased from existence. The Valoran ships moved with mechanical precision, targeting population centers and military bases alike. Admiral Una watched from orbit as her world died below her. Her defense station had been destroyed in the first wave of attacks, but she had escaped on a shuttle with a handful of survivors. They drifted in space, hiding among the debris, and watched the blue planet turn black and red. 3 billion people died in 12 hours. Half of humanity gone in less than a single day. When the bombing finally stopped, the Valoran fleet simply left. They did not land troops or claim territory. They did not check for survivors or demand formal surrender. To them, Earth was no longer a threat. It was merely a graveyard, a warning to any other primitive species that might dream of resisting the Empire. High Arbiter Malvath received news of the successful cleansing while eating his evening meal. He nodded once, satisfied, and returned to his food. The human problem had been solved. In a generation or two, the survivors would die out, and the galaxy would forget that Earth had ever existed. He could not have been more wrong. In the frozen wastes of Antarctica, deep beneath the ice, a bunker survived. It had been built decades ago as a last resort, a place where humanity could shelter if everything else failed. Now it became the seed of something new. Admiral Una landed. Her shuttle neared the bunker entrance and stepped out into the bitter cold. Hundreds of survivors were already gathering, pulled from hidden shelters and underground bases around the world. They were soldiers, scientists, engineers, and ordinary people who had somehow lived through the fire. Taiho was among them. He walked through the snow with his wife's ring hanging on a chain around his neck. His eyes were empty, but his hands were steady. When he saw Admiral Una, he saluted and spoke 3 words. "What are your orders?" Una looked at the faces around her. She saw grief, fear, and shock. But beneath all of that, she saw something else. Something that the Valoran Empire had not anticipated and could not understand. She saw rage. "We survive," Una said, her voice cutting through the wind. "We rebuild. We remember every name, every city, every life they stole from us. And when we are ready, we make them pay." A sound rose from the crowd. It started as a murmur and grew into a roar. Fists rose into the air. Voices shouted promises of vengeance. These were not defeated refugees begging for mercy. These were the survivors of humanity's darkest hour, and they would not break. Taiho gripped his wife's ring and made a silent promise. The galaxy would learn to fear the name of Earth. The Empire would burn as Sol had burned. And somewhere, somehow, Minji and their unborn child would be avenged. The long night had begun, but dawn would come, and when it did, the stars themselves would tremble. 10 years passed in silence. The Valoran Empire forgot about Earth almost immediately. Their official records listed humanity as a contained primitive reserve, a dying species not worth monitoring. Patrol ships occasionally passed through the solar system, but they saw nothing except ruins and ash. They reported that the cleansing had been successful. The humans were finished. They did not look beneath the ice. They did not scan the hollow asteroids of the belt. They did not notice the thousands of small ships moving in the shadows of Jupiter's moons. The Empire saw only what it expected to see, and it expected to see death. Deep underground, humanity was being reborn. Admiral Una had aged in the decades since the burning. Her hair had turned white, and lines of worry marked her face. But her eyes were sharper than ever, and her mind never rested. She had transformed the Antarctic bunker into a fortress, and the fortress into the heart of a secret nation. They called it the Terran Resistance, but it was really something more. It was the last hope of the human race. 300 million. Survivors scattered across hidden bases on Earth, the Moon, Mars, and the asteroid belt. Every one of them worked toward a single goal. Every one of them remembered what had been taken. Project Phoenix was the name of their greatest secret. Human scientists, working day and night, studied every piece of Valoran technology they could find. Crashed ships, captured equipment, intercepted communications, everything was analyzed and understood. Within 5 years, they had matched the Empire's technology. Within 7, they had surpassed it. Captain Taiho led the effort to build a new fleet. He was no longer the grief-stricken man who had crawled from the ruins of Sol. The grief was still there, buried deep inside him, but it had been transformed into something cold and patient. He wore his wife's ring on the same chain around his neck, hidden beneath his uniform, and he touched it every morning when he woke. The ships he built were different from anything the galaxy had ever seen. They were called ghost ships, painted black and designed to be invisible to every known sensor. Their engines were silent. Their weapons were deadly. They could appear from nothing, strike without warning, and vanish before the enemy knew what had happened. Lieutenant Hana was Taiho's second-in-command and closest friend. She was 10 years younger than him, a tactical genius who had lost her entire family in the Tokyo bombardment. She had been 17 years old on that day, a university student with dreams of becoming a teacher. Now she was one of the most dangerous military minds humanity had ever produced. Hana designed the battle strategies that would one day bring the Empire to its knees. She studied Valoran tactics, learned their weaknesses, and created plans to exploit every flaw. She worked 20 hours a day, sleeping only when her body forced her to stop. When Taiho asked her why she pushed herself so hard, she gave a simple answer. I dream about my little brother every night. He was 12. I promised I would protect him. She never said anything more about it. She did not need to. The greatest breakthrough came from the youngest member of the team. Jiwoo was only 20 years old, a physics prodigy who had been raised in the bunkers since childhood. She barely remembered the world before the burning, but she had grown up surrounded by survivors who told her stories of blue skies and green forests and cities full of light. Jiwoo created the Sunfire engine. It was a weapon of terrible power. When activated, it could destabilize a star, causing it to expand rapidly and consume everything within its system. Planets, moons, space stations, all would be vaporized in a wave of nuclear fire. One Sunfire engine could destroy an entire civilization. When Jiwoo presented her invention to the council, the room fell silent. Admiral Yuna studied the young woman's face for a long moment before speaking. Do you understand what you have built? Yuna asked. This is not a weapon of war. This is a weapon of extinction. Jiwoo met her eyes without flinching. I was 7 years old when they killed my mother. She was holding my hand when the ceiling fell. I had to let go to save myself. She paused, and her voice became very quiet. I understand perfectly what I have built. The council debated for 3 days. Some argued that humanity should not become the monsters that had attacked them. Others said that mercy was a luxury they could no longer afford. In the end, they voted to build the weapon. But they also voted on a rule. The Sunfire engine would only be used if the Empire refused to surrender. It was a last resort, a final punishment for those who would not accept peace. Humanity would offer the galaxy a choice, something the Empire had never offered them. Taiho agreed with this decision. He did not want to become like Molvith. He wanted justice, not mindless destruction. But he also knew that some enemies only understood strength. The Empire had taught humanity this lesson with fire and blood. Now humanity would return the lesson. As the 10th year ended, the Ghost Fleet was complete. 3,000 ships waited in the darkness between worlds, crewed by soldiers who had trained their entire lives for this moment. Each ship carried the names of the fallen painted on its hull in letters too small to see. 3 billion names, repeated across 3,000 vessels. Admiral Yuna gathered her commanders for a final meeting before the war began. She looked at their faces, Taiho, Hana, Jiwoo, and dozens of others, and felt a strange mix of pride and sorrow. These were her children, forged in grief and tempered by vengeance. She had hoped to give them a better world. Instead, she had prepared them for war. Tomorrow, she said, we announce our return. The Empire will learn that humanity still lives. They will have 30 days to surrender the commanders who ordered our destruction. If they refuse, we will teach them what it means to face a species with nothing left to lose. Taiho stood and spoke for all of them. We are ready. The silent years were over. The time for fire had come. Tesseract Prime was a quiet world on the edge of the Valoran Empire. It was known for its beautiful purple forests and peaceful farming communities. 20 million aliens lived there, going about their daily lives without any thought of war or conflict. They had never participated in the attack on Earth. Most of them had never even heard of humans. On the morning of the message, they learned dot. It started with static on every screen and speaker across the planet. Communication devices flickered and died, then came back to life showing the same image. A human face, stern and weathered, looking directly at the viewer. Behind him, the black void of space was visible through a ship's window. Captain Taiho spoke in the common trade language of the galaxy. His voice was calm and cold, without anger or emotion. This made his words even more terrifying. 12 years ago, your empire came to our world. We had done nothing to threaten you. We had no weapons that could harm you. We only wanted to explore the stars and find our place among them. He paused, and the screen showed images of Earth before the burning. Blue oceans, green continents, cities glowing with light at night. Beautiful and alive. You gave us a choice that was no choice at all. Surrender our future or die. When we refused to become your slaves, you burned our world. The images changed. Now they showed the aftermath. Craters where cities had stood. Ash falling like snow across dead landscapes. Bodies piled in the streets, too many to count. 3 billion of our people died in 12 hours. Mothers, fathers, children all turned to ash because your empire could not allow others to exist as equals. You thought you had destroyed us. You thought we would collapse into dust and be forgotten. Taiho leaned forward, and his eyes seemed to look into the soul of everyone watching. You were wrong. The screen showed the Ghost Fleet, thousands of ships emerging from the darkness, each one bristling with weapons the galaxy had never seen. They moved in perfect formation, silent and deadly, like predators circling their prey. We have spent these years in the shadows, watching, learning, building. We remember every name of the 3 billion you killed. We have carved those names into our ships, our weapons, our hearts. We do not forget. We do not forgive. This is humanity's final warning to the Valoran Empire. The screen showed Taiho's face again, but now there was fire in his eyes. You have 30 standard days to meet our demands. Return every human prisoner still held in your facilities. Surrender the commanders who ordered the Earth cleansing, including High Arbiter Molvith, to face trial for their crimes. Accept full responsibility for the genocide of our people. If you do this, we will show you the mercy you never showed us. We will accept peace. But if you refuse, the screen went dark for a moment, then showed a single Valoran colony world. Suddenly, the star at its center began to pulse and grow. Within seconds, it expanded outward in a wave of fire that consumed everything in its path. The planet, its moons, its orbital stations, all were swallowed by the dying star. Then there was only silence. Taiho's voice continued over the blackness. Your worlds will burn as ours did. But unlike you, we will not stop at one planet. We will not stop until your empire is ash and memory. We will hunt you across the galaxy. We will find you in every corner of every system. And we will make you understand what it means to face the wrath of a species you tried to exterminate. 30 days. The clock begins now. The transmission ended. Across Tesseract Prime, there was panic. People ran through the streets, screaming about the return of the dead. Ships tried to flee the system, only to find that their navigation computers had been infected with a virus that displayed the same message over and over again. 3 billion names. Scrolling endlessly across their screens, the message spread across the empire faster than any official communication could have traveled. Within hours, every world knew that humanity still existed. Within days, fear had taken root in the hearts of billions. High Arbiter Malvith received the transmission while sitting in his throne room. His advisors watched nervously as he viewed the message, waiting for his reaction. When it ended, Malvith was silent for a long moment. Then he laughed. "Primitives," he said, waving his hand dismissively. "They have built a few ships and learned a few tricks. This changes nothing. They are still insects pretending to be predators." One of his advisors spoke carefully. "High Arbiter, the weapon they showed, the one that destroyed the star, our scientists say it should be impossible. No known technology can." "Then our scientists are fools," Malvith interrupted. "It was obviously a recording trick, designed to frighten us. I will not be intimidated by the ghosts of a dead species." He stood from his throne and addressed the room. "Send this reply to the human fleet. We do not negotiate with vermin. Every human prisoner in our facilities will be executed immediately. Their bodies will be sent into space as a message. And when we find their hidden ships, we will finish the cleansing we started 12 years ago." His advisors exchanged worried glances, but did not argue. The order was sent. 3 days later, 10,000 human prisoners were killed across the Empire. Their bodies were launched into space in clear containers, each one marked with the Valoran symbol for pest. When the news reached the human fleet, there was silence. Then there was cold, quiet rage. Admiral Una spoke to her captains over a private channel. Her voice was steady, but those who knew her could hear the steel beneath her words. "They have chosen. Now we show them the consequences of that choice. When we are finished, the galaxy will remember humanity not as victims, but as the force that broke an empire." Taiho listened to her words and touched the ring around his neck. He had hoped for surrender. He had been prepared for war. Now war would come, and the Valoran Empire would learn that some species, when pushed to the edge of extinction, become something far more dangerous than anyone could imagine. Day 31 arrived with fire and shadow. The Valoran home world had never been attacked in 30,000 years of Imperial history. Its defenses were considered unbreakable. 1,000 orbital platforms surrounded the planet, armed with weapons that could destroy entire fleets. 10,000 warships patrolled its space, ready to respond to any threat. The people of Valora slept peacefully, confident that their walls would never fall. They woke to find human ships hanging in their sky. Lieutenant Hana had planned this strike for 3 years. She had studied every defense platform, every patrol route, every weakness in the Valoran security network. The Ghost Fleet moved through their defenses like smoke through a net, invisible and untouchable, but they did not fire their weapons. Instead, the human ships projected images onto the clouds of Valora. Holographic faces appeared across the entire planet, each one a victim of the Earth cleansing. Men, women, children. Their eyes looked down from the sky while a soft voice spoke their names. Park Minji, age 28 Seoul. Kim Siwoo, unborn. Seoul. Tanaka Yuki, age 7. Tokyo. Williams James, age 62. New York. The names continued, one after another, filling the air with an endless memorial. The people of Valora stopped in the streets and stared upward, watching the faces of the dead gaze down at them. Many had never seen a human before. Now they saw 3 billion of them. Admiral Yuna's voice cut through the display. "We could destroy your world right now. Our weapons are aimed at your cities, your palaces, your families. We could give you exactly what you gave us. But we are not here to murder innocents. We are here to show you what your leaders took from us. Watch these faces. Remember these names. Your High Arbiter ordered their deaths. Your fleet carried out the execution. Every citizen of this empire shares in the guilt of those who did nothing to stop it. We will return. And next time, we will not be so merciful." The Ghost Fleet vanished before the Valoran Navy could respond. They left behind only the fading images of human faces and the echo of 3 billion names. Panic spread across the empire like wildfire. If humans could penetrate the defenses of Valora itself, nowhere was safe. Military commanders demanded answers. Politicians blamed each other. Citizens hoarded supplies and built shelters, preparing for an attack that could come at any moment. High Arbiter Malvith responded with rage. He ordered the largest military operation in Imperial history, a full mobilization of every ship in the fleet to hunt down and destroy the human forces. He promised rewards for information about human bases. He declared that any species caught helping humans would share their fate. It did not matter. The humans were everywhere, and nowhere. Captain Taiho led the Ghost Fleet on a campaign of surgical destruction. They did not attack civilian populations. They did not bomb cities or slaughter innocents. Instead, they targeted the foundations of imperial power. Shipyards were destroyed in their construction bays, taking years of work with them. Supply depots were raided and emptied, leaving fleets stranded without fuel or ammunition. Communication satellites were corrupted, filling military channels with static and false orders. The Empire's great war machine began to fall, apart piece by piece. The most devastating strike came at the prison world of Warth. This was where the Empire sent its worst enemies, political prisoners, rebels, and criminals deemed too dangerous to kill. It was also where they had held the last surviving humans before executing them. Taiho led the attack personally. His ship cut through the orbital defenses in minutes, destroying weapons platforms that had been considered invincible. When his soldiers landed on the surface, they found the prison camps already in chaos. Guards were fleeing. Prisoners were breaking free. Among the chaos, Taiho found what he was looking for: the execution chamber where the human prisoners had died. Their ashes had been scattered carelessly on the ground, mixed with the dust of forgotten aliens. Taiho knelt in that dark room and collected a handful of the gray powder. He did not know which humans these remains belonged to, but it did not matter. They were his people, and they deserved to go home. He sealed the ashes in a container and hung it next to his wife's ring. The liberation of Vorith had an unexpected consequence. The freed prisoners included members of 3 different species that had been conquered by the Empire centuries ago. They told stories of Valoran cruelty, of entire worlds enslaved, of cultures erased and histories destroyed. Humanity was not the first victim of imperial genocide. They were simply the first to survive and fight back. These survivors asked to join the human fleet. Taiho accepted them. Within weeks, word spread across the Empire that humans welcomed anyone who opposed Valoran rule. Resistance movements that had been crushed long ago began to stir again. Planets that had accepted imperial control for generations started to question their rulers. Malvith tried to stop the collapse with force. He ordered crackdowns on any world that showed signs of disloyalty. He executed officers who failed to stop human attacks. He gave speeches promising that victory was near, that the humans would be crushed any day. Now, no one believed him anymore. Engineer Jiwoo watched all of this from her station aboard the flagship. The Sunfire engine sat in the cargo bay below her, cold and silent, waiting to be used. She monitored the battle reports and calculated the odds of various outcomes. The mathematics were clear: humanity was winning, slowly but surely, but she also knew that Malvith would never surrender. He was too proud, too stubborn, too convinced of his own importance. He would fight until the very end, even if it meant the destruction of his entire species. Jiwoo hoped it would not come to that. She had built the Sunfire engine to end wars, not to commit genocide. But if Malvith gave her no choice, she would push the button without hesitation. She had promised her mother that much. On the day the ceiling fell, Admiral Yuna gathered her commanders for a final strategy meeting. The Empire was crumbling, but it was not yet dead. Malva still controlled thousands of ships and billions of soldiers. He was preparing for a last stand at Valora, rallying every loyal force for a final battle. "This ends now," Una said. "We break their fleet, capture their leaders, and force them to face justice for what they did. No more waiting. No more patience." Taiho nodded. He was ready. The final battle was coming. The Battle of Valora lasted 7 days. 10,000 Imperial ships faced 3,000 human vessels in the largest space battle the galaxy had ever seen. The Valorans had numbers, experience, and the desperate courage of those fighting for their survival. The humans had technology, strategy, and 12 years of burning rage. Captain Taiho commanded from the front lines, his ghost ship weaving through enemy formations like a blade through water. Lieutenant Hana coordinated the fleet from the command center, her tactical genius turning every engagement into a victory. Around them, ships exploded in silence, painting the darkness with brief flowers of fire. The Valorans fought hard. They had finally learned to respect human capabilities, and they adapted their tactics accordingly. Their admirals were skilled, and their soldiers were brave. For the first 3 days, the battle was almost even. Then the allied species arrived. 3 of the 12 Imperial member species had secretly negotiated with humanity during the war. They had seen what the Empire truly was, a system of tyranny that crushed anyone who dared to be different. They had heard the stories from liberated prisoners. They had watched the holographic memorial over Valora and seen 3 billion faces looking down at them. They chose to switch sides. 1,500 ships emerged from faster than light, traveled directly behind the Imperial fleet. Their weapons opened fire before anyone could react. In the chaos that followed, the Imperial formation collapsed. Ships fled in every direction. Commanders surrendered or died at their post. By the 7th day, only a small core of loyalist vessels remained, clustered around Valora in a final defensive ring. High Arbiter Malvath broadcast desperate orders from his palace, demanding that his ships hold the line at any cost. Most of them no longer listened. Taiho broke through the last defenses on the 8th morning. His ship descended through Valora's atmosphere, burning through the sky like a falling star. He landed in the central plaza of the Imperial capital, where statues of ancient conquerors stood in silent judgment. Human soldiers poured out of the ship, their weapons ready. They met almost no resistance. The palace guards had abandoned their posts. The government officials had fled to hidden bunkers. The streets were empty, except for frightened civilians who stared at the human invaders with wide eyes. Taiho walked through the grand halls of the Imperial Palace with a small team of soldiers at his back. The walls were covered with paintings of Valoran glory victories in ancient wars, the expansion of the Empire, the celebration of conquest. He did not stop to look at them. He found Malvath in the throne room. The High Arbiter sat on his golden chair, dressed in ceremonial robes that were wrinkled and stained with sweat. He looked smaller than he had in the broadcasts, older and more fragile. His hands shook as he gripped the arms of his throne. Around him lay the bodies of his personal guards, killed by their own hands. They had chosen suicide over capture. Malvath had not been given the same option. Taiho stopped 10 feet from the throne and studied the alien who had ordered the death of his wife, his unborn child, and 3 billion others. He had imagined this moment for 12 years. He had dreamed of what he would say, what he would do. Now that it had arrived, he felt strangely empty. "You should have left us alone," Taiho said quietly. His voice echoed in the vast chamber. Malvath tried to summon his old arrogance. "You are making a mistake. Kill me, and you will create a martyr. The Empire will never accept. There is no Empire anymore," Taiho interrupted. "Your member species have abandoned you. Your fleet is destroyed. Your government has collapsed. You are the ruler of nothing." He reached into his collar and pulled out the chain around his neck. On it hung his wife's ring and the small container of ashes from the prison world. He held them up so Malvith could see. My wife was 28 years old. She was going to be a mother. She had never hurt anyone in her life. Taiho's voice remained steady, but there was something terrible beneath the calm surface. "You killed her because we would not kneel. You killed 3 billion people because they wanted to be free." He placed the ring and the ashes on the arm of the throne, right next to Malvith's trembling hand. "You will answer for every single one of them." Malvith was taken alive, as were 37 other high-ranking officials responsible for the earth cleansing. They were transported to a specially constructed prison on a barren moon, where they would await trial before a joint tribunal of humans and allied species. The trial lasted 6 months. Evidence was presented, orders signed by Malvith, recordings of planning sessions, testimonies from survivors and witnesses. The defense argued that the cleansing had been a legitimate military action, that Earth had posed a potential threat, that the Empire had the right to protect itself. The tribunal did not agree that all 38 defendants were found guilty of genocide. Their sentence was unusual but fitting: exile to Earth, to live among the ruins they had created until their natural deaths. They would see what their orders had done. They would breathe the ash of 3 billion souls every day for the rest of their lives. Admiral Yuna gave the final broadcast of the war. She stood in the rebuilt command center of the Antarctic bunker, surrounded by officers who had been children when the bombs fell. "We did not want this war. We wanted only to exist, to explore, to grow, to find our place among the stars. You taught us that the galaxy does not reward innocence. You taught us that mercy is a privilege the strong extend to the weak. So we became strong, stronger than you ever imagined. And now we extend that mercy to you. The Valoran Empire is dissolved. Its member species are free to govern themselves. Those responsible for the earth cleansing will face justice. But we will not continue the cycle of destruction. We will not become what we fought against. Let this be the lesson the galaxy remembers. Humanity does not forget. Humanity does not forgive. But humanity can choose to rebuild instead of destroy. The war is over. Long live the peace." Engineer Ji Woo watched the dismantling of the Sunfire engine with quiet satisfaction. She had been prepared to use it, but she was grateful that she never had to. Some weapons were better left. UNFIRED. Captain Taiho returned to Earth a month after the trial ended. He traveled alone to the site where Seoul had stood, now a memorial garden filled with flowers and monuments. At its center was a wall bearing 3 billion names, etched in stone that would last for millennia. He found Minji's name near the top of the list. Below it was another name, Kim Se-woo, unborn. Taiho knelt in the soft grass and pressed his palm against the cold stone. He had carried his wife's ring for 12 years. Now he took it from around his neck and buried it in the soil at the base of the wall. "We won," he whispered. "We made them pay. And now we're going to build something better. Something you would have been proud of." He stayed there for a long time, alone with the names of the dead. Around him, the rebuilt city hummed with life. Children played in the streets. Families walked through the gardens. The sky was blue again. Humanity had survived. They had fought back. They had won, and now, finally, they could begin to heal.